Hey everyone, 2 quick announcements before we start the show. First, Unchained now has a merchandise shop. We've got a few t-shirts, a couple hats, and a mug. My team and I got creative with one of the t-shirt designs and came up with an image of a crypto rabbit falling down a hole. Swirling into the hole with the rabbit are playing cards showing some of the coins like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Monero, as well as a DAO card ripped in half. There's a Guy Fawkes mask, a DeFi cake, a Lambo, and a teapot that says HODL, as well as teacups showing the Reddit and Twitter logos. There's even a shit coin. The rabbit is wearing a big Bitcoin key on a keychain, a unicorn and rainbow t-shirt, and, of course, is listening to Unchained. Check it out at shop.unchainedpodcast.com. Again, that's shop.unchainedpodcast.com. For those of you interested in giving an Unchained t-shirt, hat, or mug as a Christmas gift, order by December 13th, which is this Friday. Second, I wanted to say a few words about this episode. I think it's one of the best interviews ever on this show. Yes, the news hook has to do with the arrest of Virgil Griffith, but if you listen to the show, it's really about the 2 main tenets of the crypto ethos: decentralization and censorship resistance. As you can probably tell from my tweets and even the thoughts I expressed last week on Unconfirmed, I've been thinking a lot over why the reaction to Virgil's arrest just boggled my mind. And I realized what he was doing is pretty much against what most, if not all of my sources have told me drives them to work in this space. North Korea is the most centralized and most censorious place, organization, entity, population, government, group, country, whatever you want to call it, on the planet. As Alex Gladstein put it on an episode of The Scoop he recently recorded with Frank Chaparro, quote, "This is the least cypherpunk thing you could possibly imagine, to aid and abet the world's most vicious tyranny." Seeing people defend what Virgil was doing made me question whether I'd understood or even heard my sources correctly all these years. Like, all along, had they actually been saying censorship assistance? People who are for decentralization and censorship resistance and who understand the situation in North Korea would be fighting against the regime, not trying to help it. The interview for this episode starts with Yeonmi's story, which takes a while to get through, since, as she puts it, North Korea is so different from our world, it's like living on another planet. Toward the end, we talk in broad strokes about who could have benefited from what Virgil did, the general impact of doing any business, even tourism with North Korea, and the controversial issue of sanctions. I hope this show gets you guys thinking about why you're interested in this technology and industry and the larger impact it can have on the world, and why you all hold the values of decentralization and censorship resistance. Now, on to the show. Hi everyone, welcome to Unchained, your no-hype resource for all things crypto. I'm your host, Laura Shin. If you enjoy Unchained or Unconfirmed, my other podcast, which now features a weekly news recap after every interview, please give us a top rating or review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. This holiday season, how can your donation do the most good in the world? GiveWell spends 20,000 hours each year researching charity, looking for the places where your donation will save or improve lives the most. They provide a free list of the most impactful charities they've found. You can find out more or make a donation at givewell.org/unchained. First-time donors using that link will have their donations matched up to $1,000. They accept traditional payment methods, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and several other cryptocurrencies. Keep this in mind while you make your end-of-year tax moves. Again, that's givewell.org/unchained.
Kraken is the best exchange in the world for buying and selling digital assets. It has the tightest security, deep liquidity, and a great fee structure with no minimum or hidden fees. Whether you're looking for a simple fiat on-ramp or futures trading, Kraken is the place for you. CipherTrace cutting-edge cryptocurrency intelligence powers anti-money laundering, blockchain analytics, and threat intel. Leading exchanges, virtual currency businesses, banks, and regulators themselves use CipherTrace to comply with regulation and to monitor compliance.
Crypto.com. Get their app and buy crypto at true cost with no fees or markups. Get a metal MCO Visa card with up to 5% back on all your spending. Want more? Download the Crypto.com app today. Today's guest is Yeonmi Park, North Korean defector, human rights activist, board member of the Human Rights Foundation, and author of In Order to Live, A North Korean Girl's Journey to Freedom. Welcome, Yeonmi.
Hi, Laura. Thank you for having me.
You're not an obvious guest for my show because you're not involved in the crypto space. However, as I'm sure you're aware from Alex Gladstein, the Chief Strategy Officer of the Human Rights Foundation, who has been a previous guest on both my podcasts, cryptocurrency and North Korea are two topics that are intersecting much more often. First, Kim Jong Il's regime has been trying to get its hands on cryptocurrency. And then recently, I don't know if you're aware of this news, but on Thanksgiving, someone involved in a cryptocurrency called Ethereum was arrested here in the U.S. for giving a talk at a blockchain conference in Pyongyang, and then later allegedly trying to help the regime send cryptocurrency to evade sanctions. So I thought from the crypto community, it became aware to me. Many people were not aware of what life in North Korea was really like. So I thought it would be helpful to have you here to talk about your experience, to talk about what it means when people do business with North Korea and about the information flow there. So why don't we just start with a really basic question? Why don't you tell us what it was like to grow up in North Korea?
Yeah, so I think thank you for having me, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity to talk about it because, a lot of people in the West do have very, strong interest in North Korea, and they somehow want to participate in some ways, but not all the time their involvement is necessarily helpful to improve North Korean human rights situation, and it ends up just helping the dictatorship. Yes, I did hear about the news around Thanksgiving, and I was, not really surprised because there are so many people that I met who were just so naively somehow their involvement is going to open up the country at some point. So when I was born in North Korea, I was born in the almost mid 1990s. So that was, after Soviet Union collapse, and North Korea was, going downhill because they were not getting all this help from all other communist countries. And so when I was born, there was no public distribution system was running, and just the country was in such a deep concession, and also just starvation was everywhere. And also there was a big, information blockage. Even to this day, there's no internet in North Korea. Of course, the elite in Pyongyang few have access to it, but the most commoners like myself, they don't even know the existence of internet. And with that blockage of information and the lack of food, putting us all in a spot to just survive. And so that's what I was, doing in North Korea. I don't remember ever living there. It was just every day was a survivor to try to find food or trying to, survive from the oppression from the regime.
And you did go to school for a period. What was school like there?
Yeah, so I was born into initially a middle class, and I was able to go to school. Everything that I learned was from school was, nothing like we learn here. It's not like you're learning about any science or history, but rather everything was propaganda by the government saying how our enemy, American bastards, were trying to kill us, and how our dear leader so bravely defeated our enemies, and also why we need our dear leader to protect us from our enemies, because Americans are trying to attack us and kill us, and without our dear leader, we would all be dead. So they told us, and they taught us that why we should all be grateful. So, for instance, every room in North Korea needs to have a portrait of our dear leaders. And if the house caught fire, the first thing the fathers would protect is not even their children. The first thing they have to protect is the portraits of their leaders. And if the portraits get burned or get damaged, then not only the person who was responsible, but the 3 generations of that family member is gonna go to concentration camp and get punished. So even in school.
Wait, even if the fire was an
children,
accident?
no, even the earthquake happens. There was a case where a man who did not know. So in North Korea, every front page of newspaper have to have a portrait of their leader and tell us what he did. But on the back side is normal, the writing. So he didn't see the other side, and he ripped it, and then he, smoked it with his cigarettes. And then that was the reason he was sent to political prison camp. So the degree of the terror and the oppression and the zero tolerance is what keeping North Korea keep going right now for 70 years.
You also said in your TED Talk that you were taught that the dear leader could read your thoughts.
Yeah.
How did they make you think that, and how did that affect your own thinking?
So, in school, so if you try to understand North Korea as a country, it's a hard topic to understand. But if you think of it as a religion, so North Korea, apparently, it is one of the 10 religions in the world. And we often don't know that. We think it's just some crazy country, but it is a cult. So North Korea regime, copied the Bible. So, there are people believing in God. So, it's not completely absurd that North Korean people believe in Kim. So basically, they told us that our dear leader, the first Kim, loved us so much, and he was chosen by this universe who could do miracles, gave us his son, Kim Jong Il. So even Kim Jong Il died, that his body died, but his spirit is with us forever. So therefore, his spirit knows what I'm thinking even when I'm asleep and I'm awake, and he can show up in the east and the west at the same time. He can do anything in this world. And then there's no information coming in, and if that's all you can believe and that's all you're taught to believe from your birth, of course that's what you're gonna believe. So even after I escaped to China, when people are saying Kim is a dictator and that's why you're starving, and I was like, what are your bastards talking about my dear leader that way? I was so afraid that I was even gonna commit a thought crime. So thinking even in North Korea is a rebellion. It's not a degree of we are asking for freedom of speech. Even freedom of thinking is not allowed in North Korea. That's how oppressed the country is.
You also wrote about how when you would leave for school, your mother always told you to watch your mouth. And she also told you things like that even if you whisper, the birds and mice would hear you. What message was she trying to give you?
So they were in North Korea, everyone exists to become a revolutionary, to die and serve for the regime. We are not individuals to be born and fulfill our dreams or our aspirations. And even elementary school students, it's there's no concept of human rights or minor. So you have to go to see public execution, and people get disappeared all the time. And usually, the biggest crime you can commit in North Korea is not raping somebody or not murdering somebody. The biggest crime you can commit is saying something not right about the regime. So that is the biggest crime you can commit. So, every morning that I leave home to go to school, it's not like my mom saying, oh, be careful, on the road or strangers or anything. She would say, always remember, even if you think no one is listening, the birds and mice always can hear you. So that was a teaching from my mom, and that just made me to numb and never think what critical thinking is. So when I came to South Korea, people said how did you believe that Kim Jong Il was starving? Because in North Korea they tell us that our dear leaders are hungry for us because they are working so hard and they don't get enough sleep. And as a young girl, I believed it. But and then I escaped to South Korea, and I looked at the picture of Kim Jong Il. And then the first time and then they were saying, like, he's a fat guy. He cannot be possibly starving. And, like, someone literally had to teach me that he was fat. Otherwise, because I was never thinking critically, I couldn't see it in myself. And that's how I learned that, everything has to be taught, including, that critical thinking. We think we somehow understand the critical thinking naturally, but that's something that doesn't come naturally if you were born in North Korea, who never heard the concept of critical thinking.
Your father was sent to a labor camp when you were 10. What crime had he committed? Or crime in air quotes, I should say.
Exactly, isn't it? I mean, if he were born in the free country, who would be a complete normal person. But in North Korea, it's a socialist country, so trading is a crime. So when we call black market in North Korea, that does not mean we are selling weapons or drugs or human trafficking people. Literally, we are selling rice, clothes, and shoes, something daily life items. And he was involved in black market business. Initially, he was selling sugar, dried fish, and cloth, but later he sold the metal like a copper, silver, nickel, and then that was a crime. So he was sent to labor camp, and he was sentenced to more than 10 years for that.
And how did your life change after he was imprisoned?
Right. So as I said, in North Korea, if someone commits a crime, the crime doesn't start with the person who committed. So in North Korea, even though it's a socialist country, there's no real equality. The government, the regime, made the 성분 system, which is like different class system. And because of my father was a criminal, then my status was going down too. And they would call me, my blood was tainted, and I wasn't pure anymore in the eyes of my dear party. And I could never be able to ever marry someone who was in a higher life status. And my fate was determined to be always starving and possibly just die soon from the disease and starvation.
And how do they enforce that?
I mean, how do you enforce all those
Yeah, like the Songbun caste thing. Like, how do they? Is it that you're not allowed to go to school, or what happens?
Yeah, so Songbun system is such a inhuman way of oppressing and controlling people. So there are three big categories. We say core is top. We are very loyal to the regime, maybe top 1%, or the people who are in Pyongyang. And though we say, wavering is middle class, who are merchants or, teachers, some people in the middle. And though when we say hostile class in the bottom, who have relatives in South Korea, or whose family members who left to South Korea, or whose family members, like my father, who went to prison camp. So most of them are in that bottom class, and some of them in the middle, and the very tiny percent are on the top. But in that even three big categories, they divide to another 50 subcategories of different class. The craziest thing is that you can't even know yourself that where your 성분 is exactly, but if you are in the wavering or hostile or in the core class. So when you are trying to even marry or become a police officer or get a job, all the people doing the background, the check, and tell you where you are and what you can do, what you cannot do. So we all somehow know our fate when we are born. We know which our grandpa was in the South, or which my uncle was in the prison, or who married whom. And also it affects your family member marry somebody, but then it's not only ending there, but if someone married their family members, but then the other side family members who are in the prison, then your 성분 status going down too. So you can always go down, but you can never go up. unless there's a miracle happens. So it's so easy to go down in the Sangmun caste, but like never going up. So the man would never marry me because my Sangmun was extremely low. And if I marry even someone who was in the high caste system, they were gonna only come down. They can never go up. So that's how people make each other hate, and each other to divide and be with only same like background. So the core people would not get tainted by the people like us, like who are in the hostile class.
You also somehow saw the movie Titanic, which is an American movie, while you were in North Korea. How did you see that, and what impact did it have on you?
So, as I said, right, there's no internet in North Korea, but luckily we have this long, wide border opened up with China. And a lot of outside information comes from China by the smugglers. And watching this outside information isn't something, like it's an extremely risky thing to do. It would be something unimaginable for us to think that people can get killed for watching a movie. But apparently it is. In North Korea, there are people losing their lives for watching outside information. And my case, I was young, but my uncles had a movie Titanic. Somehow they got, I don't know how they got it, but they were like lent it to us. So I watched the movie along with my parents. And that was the first time I felt some humanity and also had a little bit, taste of freedom. And it didn't quite like challenging me to think the rest of the world was going to be free and very prosperous. But I just thought maybe the, outside the world would not that terrible as my vision told me.
And you also talked about how it changed or introduced the idea of love to you that previously you had only one definition of love. What was that definition? Right. And then what did that movie open your mind to?
Yeah, so if you have read the book 1984 by George Orwell, he talks about the importance of the language. The big brother kid comes up with a new speak, right? And basically that's what North Korea regime did. They came up with a new dictionary. The dictionary does not have definition for freedom, human rights, or even gay. There is no way you can look up in the dictionary what that is. And also love. The dictionary only defines love as the love that you have for their leader or the party. You can never use the word to describe your emotions to another human being like your father or mother, your lover. So if you don't have that word, then you don't understand the concept. Therefore, your ability to think those complex things is getting very limited. And in that situation in North Korea, we don't have the concept of those love, that there was never a movie made to show that a lover can die for another lover. Every movie in North Korea made to show us that how, the revolutionaries dying for the party and revolution and what an honorable thing that is. So when I saw a movie, Titanic, I was like extremely confused because there's not a single thing about revolution. And at the end, this guy is dying for a woman. And I was so shocked, like, why would anyone make a movie, out of such a shameful story? And, like, that was something, dying for your lover was something never valued or even never talked about. I didn't even think that was a possibility. And then I was keep thinking, and I thought, it's just so beautiful. I felt like it was so natural to just love somebody and die for lover. And that's when I thought, that's when I was started thinking slightly differently and question really, very minor my own way.
And you eventually escaped when you were 13. How did you escape, and what made you try to risk your life to escape?
Yeah, so when I was escaped from North Korea, it's very different. It's like I never seen the map of the world. I never knew, how many continents we had, how many countries we had, what democracy was or what freedom was. I was luckily living in a town called Hesan, where we are facing border with China. So we just had one river that was flowing between China and North Korea. And at night, I was able to see China, and they had electricity at night. If you see North Korea right now from the satellite pictures, it is literally the darkest star on the world. They don't have 24 hours electricity and extremely dark at night. And by being advantage of living in the border town, I was, seeing the lights. And I became really, really hungry. So North Korean regime, often we think it's such a poor country, but it isn't. It has all the money in the world to build all those luxurious resorts for the party members. They have all the money in the world to spend for billions of dollars every year making more nukes and testing them. And regime chose to starve us because they can control us that way. If you are full and you have food to eat, the next thing you're going to think of is like meaning of your life and what can be better in my life. But when you're like on the verge of starving to death, you don't think of any of that. You just only try to survive. So North Korean regime purposefully like starving us, the class that I was in, and I wasn't able to find anything to eat in North Korea. And only way for me was think that time was if I go where the lights were, maybe I find something to eat. And I also heard these rumors in my town that, dogs in China eat rice. And I thought that was like such a joke. Like people in North Korea dying from not eating food. Like how possibly on earth, like dogs can eat rice. And I still thought maybe, what can I do? If I don't do anything with my life, I might not be alive tomorrow morning. And that was, risking my life and crossing that frozen river to China and see what happens. And that's why I decided to escape and do that journey.
And what happened when you got to China?
I was tricked by human traffickers. So once I arrived in China, right before I escaped, I was going to escape with my own sister. So I was 13 years old and she was 16 years old. And two of us were going to escape together. But one day I got such a horrible stomach ache. And then I went to hospital. And, in North Korea, the hospital that I was in, we don't have x-rays or any machine to know what's going on. So simply my doctor rubbed my belly and he said, "Oh, I think you have some appendicitis. We have to operate on you right now, soon." And they cut my belly without any painkiller. And they, opened it and they realized it was just a lot of malnutrition infection. And they closed me down. So most of the people in North Korea in hospitals do not die from a cancer or any other disease. We get killed way before that, which is a lot of times just starvation infection. And so my sister couldn't go with me. I wasn't sure my surgery was successful or not get infected. So she escaped a few days before and left me a note saying, "Go follow this lady, that she's going to help you go to China." So luckily I got out of the hospital without infection. And as soon as I removed my stitches, I did find the lady with my mother, and she said she could send me to China. And she lied to me that if I go to China, I was going to find food and might find my sister. So my mother and I crossed the frozen river into China with the help of a guy, but later we realized that was a human trafficker, that they sold us to Chinese men. They sold my mother for around $75 or something dollars, and they sold me for less than $300 because I was a virgin and young. And as soon as we got into China, a Chinese human trafficker raped my mother in front of me. And then they told us, if you want to survive in China, then you have to be sold as a sexual slave. And that's the moment when I completely lost my faith in humanity, and I just stopped feeling things, I think.
And during this time, I heard about how somebody said the word free to you, and you didn't know what that was. Can you tell us about the first time you heard the word free?
Yeah, so while I was living in China as a slave for 2 years, at the end of 2 years' time, it was extremely dangerous, in China. Chinese regime constantly cracking down us, and they catch us and send us back to North Korea to get tortured and they killed. So in China, living in there was so unbearable, even as much as being in North Korea. And one day we met a North Korean defector woman, and she told me, actually, if we go to South Korea, then we will be free. And I was so confused. I asked her, what do you mean I will be free? And she said, you can wear your jeans, you can watch your movies, and no one gonna arrest you for that. And from someone from North Korea, people killed by watching movie or wearing jeans or getting you into, prison and getting punished. It was something so revolutionary that I couldn't believe. How can on earth that is okay? And she said, it is really true that if we go to South Korea, that, we will be free. We can, wear jeans and watch movies, and no one's going to arrest you. So I thought, that's amazing. I'm going to risk my life for that. That's when I decided to walking across the Gobi Desert in minus 40 degrees. And with a compass in my hand, I crossed the desert to Mongolia in 2009 when I was 15 years old. And that's how I became free.
In a moment, we'll discuss more about Yeonmi's story and why so many human rights groups focus on getting outside information into North Korea. But first, a quick word from the sponsors who make this show possible. Crypto.com sees the future of cryptocurrency in every wallet. Have you seen the MCO Visa card? A metal card powered by crypto, loaded with perks including up to 5% back on all your spending and unlimited airport lounge access. They pay for your Spotify and Netflix too. What's not to love? With Crypto.com, not only can you spend your crypto, but you can grow it too. Earn up to 6% per year on the most popular coins like BTC, XRP, LTC, and up to 12% per year on stablecoins like PAX or TUSD. Just a few taps before you start receiving interest every week. Join the over 1 million others and download the Crypto.com app today.
Will the world follow France and advocate banning privacy coins? Will government-backed stablecoins become the new fiat? Are distributed and peer-to-peer exchanges just a flash in the pan? The answer is maybe. Virtual currencies can flourish and create a new, private, and more versatile economy. But that grand vision can't happen without keeping crypto clean. And that requires support of governments and accountability for bad actors. Privacy-enhanced compliance using cryptographic controls has the potential to preserve anonymity without compromising legitimate investigations. CipherTrace is working on this vision of the future. Sign up to stay up to date on the Privacy Enhanced Compliance Initiative and receive authoritative crypto AML reports quarterly. www.ciphertrace.com/keepcryptoclean. Today's episode is brought to you by Kraken. Kraken is the best exchange in the world for buying and selling digital assets. With all the recent exchange hacks and other troubles, you want to trade on an exchange you can trust. Kraken's focus on security is utterly amazing. Their liquidity is deep, and their fee structure is great, with no minimum or hidden fees. They even reward you for trading so you can make more trades for less. If you're a beginner, you will find an easy on-ramp from 5 fiat currencies. And if you're an advanced trader, you'll love their 5x margin and futures trading. To learn more, please go to kraken.com. That's KRAKEN.com.
Back to my conversation with Yeonmi Park. So you made it to South Korea, and why don't you just fill us in on everything that has happened to you to this point where, now you live in the States and you have a degree from Columbia and, you speak at the UN and you just, have written a book. Why don't you fill us in on what happened once you reached freedom?
Once I reached the freedom, arrived in South Korea, it was, I thought like, oh, I'm at the end of the journey. My life is going to be great. But it was completely opposite. Learning to be free was so painful. It was so difficult that I actually said, if there's a guarantee that I'm gonna, get enough frozen potatoes and enough some food, I might go back to North Korea. I mean, if the region don't kill me, and that's how hard it was adjusting to freedom and South Korea, because South Korea also had such a heavy discrimination against North Korean defectors. And I was made fun of to speaking the way that I was, like having North Korean accent. And also catching up with the society like South Korea were so advanced. And the competition is so vigorous that there was no way for me to compete. When I arrived, I was almost an adult. And the kids in South Korea were going to study English when they were in mother's stomach and studying English in their kindergarten. And they, do so much for education. And it was, just in every possible way, it was so difficult. But after all that difficulty, when I was in university in South Korea, one day I read a book, Animal Farm by Virgil Orwell. And that was my turning point. So until that point, so biggest thing after North Korea is, of course, understanding freedom or free will or to modernity. It was all challenging, it was completely going from one different planet to different planet. But what was the hardest thing was trusting again, right? So when I arrived in South Korea, they said, oh, Kims were dictators and, Korean were started by Kim Il-sung, not by Americans and South Koreans. And they say, oh, you're brainwashed. Everything you believed was lie and everything I'm telling you is true. And I was so shocked and I was like, so everything that I believed was lie, then how do I know what you're saying is not lie? At that point, it's you're just so confused. How is this possible? Everything that all I believed with all my heart was lie. And, I was start trusting again. And when I read the book by George Orwell, The Animal Farm, I could see North Korea in me. I could see my grandma in the old pigs. I could see just young pigs in myself. Everything made sense to me, why everything became that way. And then I started really trusting the information that I was finding online and the books in South Korea. And then one day I was sitting in the room and watched the TV in South Korea, and it was big emotional concert, fundraising concert. The celebrities were crying and then suddenly it was showing donation, and it was a campaign for animals' rights. And my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe you had animals' rights. What is animals' rights? I didn't even know I had the rights as a human being. How on earth that we are living in the same planet, there are 25 million people who don't even know they are oppressed, don't know even they are enslaved and they have rights. But the other parts of the world, they have a room to care about animals' rights. And that's when I decided something was so wrong. And And then I realized also that just the world had no idea what was happening to North Korean people, because the media in the West, when I was starting my activism is when the movie, I don't know if you heard the movie called The Interview came out by Sony.
Yeah, I saw it. I have a friend who was in it, but anyway.
Really? It was a really sad moment because every newspaper was so busy making fun of North Korean dictator and North Korea. How bizarre these people were marching on the square. The old people were so brainwashed and acting like robots. And how bizarre this dictator looking like cartoon character with a funny haircut. And everything was so funny that people didn't get the gravity of this tragedy that we are having. It's a Holocaust happening, but the world is just so busy making fun of it. And that's when I realized I have to let the world know what's happening. It is not so funny. I mean, I think people were confused about North Korea. That of course we have freedom to make fun of North Korea. That's our freedom and that's our privilege. But when something is so funny, then you lose the gravity of the seriousness of this issue. How much people are being, affected by this tragedy. So I think that's when, started educating myself and really understood why the world is not caring about this issue. It was not just because the people were in freedom were just evil and having no compassion, but just because they did not know what was happening. And that's what I do now. It's really, I dedicate all my life to let the world know what's happening and just tell the world that this must be stopped.
So we're going to get to how you do that, but I actually also just want to ask a little bit more about foreign media in North Korea nowadays. If you know, how common is it for people now? Do you think, is there still literally no internet access? Because, you defected obviously a while ago, so I'm not sure how much how things have changed or, because I, as far as I understand, I think a lot of groups working to free North Korea, their main focus is still on getting outside information in. Why is that their strategy? And how do they do that?
Yeah. So, I'm still working with a lot of underground networks, and I have contacts in North Korea. So I get the up-to-date news from North Korea. And, I work with a lot of NGOs who does rescue and who gets information. And based on what I hear from the people in North Korea right now is that, yes, the outside information is really everyday life. At least minimum more than 80% of people, 87 even up to percent people have access to outside information, especially among the elites. And in these metropolitan cities and in the border towns, they have a lot of access to the outside information, and the fact that is changing the people's minds. The young generation like myself grew up with outside information, that they do really have less loyalty towards the regime. Of course, they are staying silent because of the fear, because of this punishment, inhumane punishment by the regime. But inside, they know that the regime is not the good one. So, for me, is that to change in North Korea, it's not like the answer should be the movement should start within North Korean people. They should demand their freedom and their rights. And that's true, positive change is going to happen in North Korea. And that only can start with liberation of their minds. And the outside information is liberating their minds. They are slaves, and even in their minds to the regime. But this information is going in, they see it, and they are not slaves anymore, at least with their minds. And I think if we get enough information and to tell them what they deserve and what humans deserve, I do think this is a real chance that when we can free North Korea with information.
And when you say that there's a lot of outside information in North Korea, does that mean that the punishment for watching it is less, or like how can it be a lot, and how do you define a lot? Do they still have to do it in secret, or like how is this happening?
Yes. So the one when I saw it's so because of the country right now becoming very corrupt. So North Korea regime, has one of the worst corruptions in the world. And because if you think about it, as you're officer in the government, you don't really get the rations, and your salary is extremely low. They said the doctor's salary a month is something over $1. You cannot possibly survive with that money a month. So doctors, officials, and the party members have to find a way to survive. And that means accepting the bribes. And the bribe is coming from people who commit the crime. So, of course, there are still people going to prison camps and still getting executed for distributing outside information. But for doing that, they get money. You need to make money somehow, and that means you have to sell outside information. But when you get caught, then you have to bribe. But if you get unlucky, you're going to get executed. So, of course, this is an extremely dangerous thing, but also it opens the opportunity for the people to survive. And that's a way. Of course, you cannot now go to movie theater and publicly watch outside information, but you do it at your home with TV. And the electricity is a real problem, but then these people getting wealthy by corruption, and they get this, somehow there's like a natural way, or burning the oil or something. They get the electricity that way, and they get this the devices like we call it notepad, not quite notebook, laptop, but the notepad that doesn't have internet but can't play USB sticks or SD cards. So all this modern technology is helping North Koreans to access to information, and also there's so much demand, but this NGOs, is increasing the supply. They get all this, information like USB sticks and all this they cut the cost when it goes to North Korea, and that just makes it so much available for people to access. And also, it's to get out because of the corruption than before. And people's loyalty has changed. Everyone just tried to survive. So maybe in my mother's generation, there were so many true believers, and they would go to authority and, complain. But now just people just want to survive. So less loyalty makes it available for people to trust each other and selling these things underground and bribe each other to survive.
Yeah, I was just realizing, I bet you probably watched Titanic on a DVD, but now on a USB.
Time was actually, what was it? It was a really old time. It was the films were in it, even before the DVD. It was in the late 90s, and North Korea always catching up with the technology a few decades later. So, my time was before I escaped, it was a DVD. But when I saw Titanic was something really old cassette or almost. Like a VHS right now,
cassette?
Yeah. Those things I use. And right now, when I talk to my North Korean contacts in North Korea, they use SD cards, USB with tiny devices that you can even swallow. When you're in trouble, you can just swallow them, and the officials can't really find you. My time was so hard to hide because they were so big, but now it's so easy.
Yeah, and not only that, but you can only watch one movie on one tape, but with an SD card or a USB, you can watch hundreds or thousands even. I don't know how much you can fit on there, but...
Yeah, even I remember we needed few tapes to even watch Titanic. Was such a long movie, it was hard to finish a Titanic because of lack of electricity or all of that. We need a few tapes, and we sometimes took my time, sometimes it took months to finish a movie because we only get the electricity on the the ideal leaders like birthday or New Year's Eve, something like only national holidays they gave us electricity. But now, USB don't need the entire device with the power. You can charge and it can last for many hours.
Wow.
So it's North Koreans are also benefiting by these technological advances right now.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask you is there's this increasingly popular trend for tourists, even from the United States, to go to North Korea.
Yeah.
When people go to North Korea as tourists, what impact does that have on the country?
So it is a thing. So in North Korea, when I was there, they told us, everyone wants to come to North Korea. We are the most envied country in the world. Literally, there was a song called Nothing to Envy. So we had nothing to envy in this world because we are the envious country, And they say everyone admires our dear leaders and they all worship our dear leaders. So they will show us the pictures of the foreigners come to North Korea and bow in front of the statue of Kim. And of course, I believed it, everyone really admires our dear leader. And so when you go to North Korea as a tourist, yes, you reinforce this propaganda that North Korean people are doing. The second of all, the dictatorship wants this hide currency by these tourists. And the tourist idea and the argument of them going to North Korea is such a naive way of arguing it. They say, if I go to North Korea, I'm going to change some people's minds because I'm such a generous, benevolent foreigner. And the Westerners, if I show them that I'm such a kind person, they will change their mind about themselves. And then they're going to, maybe start a revolution or open up. But the craziest thing is that, Kim Jong Il was educated in Switzerland. He went to school in a country that is most democratic, that respects human dignity and freedom. So by teaching them how generous Westerners is not going to change. North Korean elite, of course, knows everything. They know too well that they don't want change. They know that if the system collapses, they lose their privileges. They lose their royal status. They are not the core Sanggun anymore. And they know that those defectors go to South Korea, they all become commoners. Even they were the highest ranking in the party. When they defect to South Korea or America, they just become one of everybody. They are not special anymore. Their children don't get those benefits for their lifetime. These elite people go to school in Beijing or Europe, in Germany, and in Moscow. They see the rest of the world. They know what's happening exactly. And they have every intention to keep the system going for their benefit. So when you go, your guys were the ones who were studying in Beijing and who went abroad to study foreign language, and who are the children of the most elite people. And when you only interact with those people, and when you go to staying at these hotels or these casinos or anywhere you go, the people that you meet, the ones who are benefited by the regime, who doesn't want the change. So you don't helping anyone's mindset. And you also give money to the regime to maintain in power. And also, it's ethically so wrong. It's like you are visiting concentration camp, but not as a liberator, but as a friend, as a celebrator of this tragedy. Imagine you right now when you are during the World War II, we have a ticket to concentration camp, and not liberating them, but show them how you are so very fat and you're free. And that's what you're doing, going to North Korea and looking at miserable, starving North Koreans, and look at me, I'm free because I was fortunate enough to join democracy, but you're not. So in so many possible ways, this is so messed up. And I can't even describe. And I think a lot of people do not have the bad intention to go. They are just so genuinely, naively believe that they can change people's minds and this is going to benefit in some ways, but that is so not, and actually it's such a destructive behavior in the movement of liberating North Koreans. And yeah, it's just so sad how sometimes people are so naive that way.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask, because this is similar but a little bit different, that cryptocurrency researcher I mentioned before, his name is Virgil Griffith. He had permission from the North Korean government to give a talk at this conference in Pyongyang on blockchain technology. Yes. So knowing what you know about how the Kim regime works, how they, interact, or how they allow interactions with foreigners, who do you think the audience would have been? Who would have benefited from such a talk?
So right now, North Korea, Venezuela, all these countries are interested. The regimes are interested, not the people, because they want to avoid the sanction. They want to make the more nukes. North Korea makes money by selling drugs, by human trafficking its own people, by selling weapons to Middle East. So they do all this dark crime, and they need more money, and they need to avoid the international sanctions, and they need cryptocurrency. So it is, of course, the cryptocurrency can empower a lot of individuals oppressed by the regimes, but also we have to be cautious because it can be also used by the dictator. I don't know how North Korea went far to creating their own currency, and cryptocurrency ain't gonna do it. But anyone who is benefited by this free society going there and helping this murderer is a crime, and I think he is about to prosecute by the U.S. government, right? And
yeah. It's not clear what will happen, obviously, but he was charged. Yeah.
If he was really benefiting this dictator, that is a crime. So I think I don't know enough to go into the entire crypto benefit. I think when it comes to North Korea, all I can say is North Korean government is extremely interested in cryptocurrency because they want to avoid the sanctions in their illegal activities, and they need that technology and support. And I just hope that people stay on the side of people, not with the dictators. And what can I really say? He had the freedom to go to North Korea and give that speech, but that wasn't legal apparently. And I think we have rule of law in this world, and that's what keeps our world better than North Korea.
Yeah, I also, earlier when you said cryptocurrency could help people in oppressed regimes, I think obviously that's true if they have access to the internet, but in North Korea where they don't, I think it would be quite difficult for anybody who's not part of the regime to benefit.
That cryptocurrency conference that he was in, he was absolutely benefiting the regime, not the people, obviously. He didn't go there to empower the people. He went there to empower the dictatorship. The people who can only attend that cryptocurrency conference is the extreme top elite who train to become hackers, who train to do all those illegal activities, and who want every intention to want the regime to stay. He didn't go some commoners conference where everyone could attend. So, he just went there to team up with the dictator and try to empower the regime. So that's the thing. That cryptocurrency conference wasn't any conference.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said this because people on Twitter seem to think that he could have interacted with everyday North Koreans, and I'm not an expert in North Korea, but I have read so many books on it, and I was like, what? I was like, I don't think you guys know how this place works because he would be in a prison camp right now if he did that.
He might get shot. So Orwell got tortured and to death. The American poor university students, right, from Virginia Tech. Yeah. And there's a South Korean woman who went to Kumgang mountain, the tourist, and the official said, you cannot pass that line, and she did, and they shot her right on the spot.
Oh my God.
If these people truly believe that, they can go to North Korea and meet everyday life, why don't they dare to try it? It's a hermit kingdom, not because the information is only controlled for North Koreans. North Korean regime controls the information both ways. They control what North Korean people can hear about the rest of the world, and they control the information that what we can know about North Korean people, even outsiders we can't know. So when you even go there as a tourist, you cannot just go take a bike, hiking around and go anywhere you want, or there's backpack traveling that you do in the Southeast Asia. You have to be with your guides all the time. Otherwise, you become a traitor and sent to prison camps like what Otto Reinbeer did.
Yeah. And all he did was taking a poster or something.
Yeah, that was a crime. Can you believe that? That's a crime that he took his life for. I mean, if North Korea has a gut to treat a white American that way, can you imagine what they are doing to North Koreans who doesn't have voice, who's not visible in the rest of the world? If that's a brutality they do with a white person from America. It's that terror that North Koreans are going through is something beyond our comprehension.
Yeah, and just to be, to ask a finer point on this, because I also saw people on Twitter saying things like, sanctions hurt the citizens of these countries more than they hurt the leaders. Yeah. So,
right.
And he was, one of the things that the Department of Justice charged him with was helping the North Korean regime evade sanctions. So if he actually had done that, what effect do you think that would have? Would that help the North Korean people or hurt them?
So I have an anecdote. So when I was young, I studied, it was 90s, right? North Korea had the greatest famine. It was a man-made famine. The regime chose to starve us. So more than over 3 million people died, not in Pyongyang, but the people who were in the hostile class in the northern part. That was a lot of people. Seeing dead bodies on the streets, everyday life for me. I never thought that was something unusual that I had to be shocked. And in that situation, I'm still very petite. North Koreans are average 3 to 4 inches shorter than South Koreans, even though we were same people, because of the malnutrition. And so this malnutrition, when we were there, they were gathering these starving children, and they get some foreigners to come and see. And they get, food from some UNICEF, I don't know, UN or other countries get so much cash and medical aid, all of this. And they use us as a toys and show them. And then when those things come in, they all take them to Pyongyang. So those aid, those money, those rice, those food that you send doesn't come to us. That goes to North Korean elite people. So if those aid helped, why did I escape and became a sexual slave and being raped in China? The first thing when I arrived in China, and after getting my mom raped, and they said you have to be sold and get raped, and then say if you don't like it, you can go back to North Korea. My mother asked me, what did I want to do? She asked me, Yeonmi, do you want to go back? What do you want to do? One thing made me to change my mind was when I, for the first time, saw a trash bin in China. I did not know what it was, but the lady told me that's where you throw away things that you don't want. I was so shocked. How on earth do you have things to throw away in this country? I never needed a trash can in my life in North Korea. There's nothing to throw away in North Korea. And people in North Korea, if they really get benefited by all this international aid, no one should be dying. In those 90s, when I was exactly in North Korea, South Korea, all these Hyundai, all these big groups, when the Kim Dae-jung, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He gave millions of dollars, the billions of dollars money, and the food, cash, and every possible resources that he could gather in South Korea. And the international community helped. None came to the most vulnerable people like us. And it all went to the region. So the people right now keep arguing the sanction is hurting everyday life. There's no way we can be hurt than what we are already now. There's no way people can suffer more than what we are suffering right now. And those things that we give to North Korean regime only benefiting the regime. And why is that so hard? These people understand computer science and economics, all of these things. If you do the thing that the dictator doesn't want, that means you are winning. If you want to give the thing that dictator wants, that you are benefiting him. North Korean dictator wants the sanction to be lifted. That means it is definitely benefiting him. And we don't want to benefit this dictator, right? Like when I got attacked by the North Korean regime, I thought, oh, I'm winning. I need to be hated by him. I need to be criticized by him. If I was praised by him, I would definitely do something wrong. The North Korean regime wants the sanction lifted, and they want tourists to come in. And if you do the exact opposite, I know that we are on the right side of the history. It's really not that hard. It's just so easy. And I just don't know why some people are so somehow invested emotionally on this word of sanction. Sanction in the context of North Korea is exactly meaning of the starving the elite, starving the regime. Sanction items is like North Korean regime cannot buy the items like in a ski resort items. They cannot buy sports cars. They cannot buy Chanel bags or Prada bags. Those are the items on the sanction items. And even those food that we send is not going to the most vulnerable people. So why are there so many people are so passionately using their time and resources and arguing that why we should benefit the dictator who is so fat enough and who is always so well fed? Why do we need to feed him more with all our resources that can go to benefiting so many starving people right now?
So given the fact that the Kim regime has nuclear weapons and, is apparently now finding other ways to fund itself, what do you think is the best way to deal with Kim Jong Un? Obviously getting information in is one, but what else do you think could be done to help free the North Korean people?
So there are several ways, but I think there are really, number one is awareness, that people really don't know exactly what's happening, right? There are so many misinformation, and they need to understand the regime has no intention ever gonna give up the nuclear weapon voluntarily. They are just playing with the rest of the world, and they just try to use this as a, card as we are gonna get rid of the nukes, so you give me more money, and so they can actually secretly build more nukes. That we need to understand that. That's why, one, we need a sanction. We need to starve the regime as much as we can, and as much as we can. And I think that's why that Trump sanction worked. That's why we got North Korea out of their hermit kingdom and in the conversation table. So we need a sanction. And the second is empowering people. We needed this information to go in North Korea so people get empowered. They know they deserve this rights. They know that the rest of the world is prosperous and free. And the third that I personally care is the rescue. It's like during the Nazi Holocaust, right? These defectors escape to China with everything they have, and they become modern slaves. They become sexual slaves. And there are so many NGOs that rescue them to South Korea, to America, to free country. And there are currently up to almost 300,000 defectors are hiding in China, and most of them are women and girls who are being raped right now every day. And we need to rescue them. And I think that's what I just say, that there are three ways. One is awareness, so we can pressure on regime more. And second is getting information. And third is rescuing these most vulnerable people right now in the world to safety. And there are so many NGOs that are already involved in this movement right now.
And for the listeners who are hearing your stories and are moved to help North Korea, are there any particular organizations or what do you suggest they do?
It's exactly the reason why I'm on the board of the Human Rights Foundation is that Human Rights Foundation, of course, they are, interested in involved in getting information inside North Korea, but they are helping with all these other groups, doing the rescuing work, doing empowering women or these most vulnerable people, and they have, connection to all those NGOs and helping them. So if you reach out to HRF, they know every NGO that working in this field, and they're going to connect you to people that you want to help it with. And they have every connection to everybody. So, it's very easy. All you have to do is reach out to people who are at the HRF and what do you care about and how do you get involved and what you can contribute. And they always find your way to, help connect you and do the right thing.
Yeah. And listeners who haven't heard my episodes with Alex Gladstein of the Human Rights Foundation, I will link to those in the show notes. He is just a font of information about human rights issues as well as cryptocurrency and how Bitcoin can help oppressed people. So, Yeonmi, where can people learn more about you and your work?
Well, I'm very active on social media, Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, or I also wrote a book, so it has a lot of more in-depth of North Korean history, why it became that way, and where they're heading to. So if you just really want to know the perspective of North Korea, not from the perpetrators, not from the regime or these elite people, if you just really want to know the perspective that this we are survivors having, then you should not only my memoir, but there are a lot of other memoirs are written by defectors. And I assure that none of the defectors who survived the regime is going to tell you tourism is the answer and lifting the sanction is the answer. None of us are saying that. Everyone, we experience the regime the first hand. We all say the opposite. And if you believe not to believe survivors, and if you choose to believe in perpetrators, and that's out of my control. But please listen to all the other survivors who have written their memoirs, and they are risking their lives to raise their voice. Even though I escaped, right now I'm a green card holder living in America, because I'm speaking out like right now and tell the world about the truth. All my relatives, 3 generations of my relatives back in North Korea been disappeared. I don't know they've been executed or in a concentration camp, but that's the thing. This is a regime that we are dealing with. That's how evil this regime is. They are still punishing people, even though I escaped. So I don't know how else I can describe how evil this regime and how you should be so careful with your actions if that's whether going to benefit the regime or the people. Because sometimes without our ignorance can, have the evil. And I think that we are responsible for our ignorance.
I do hope someday that, you can reunite with your family. And
yeah, I hope they're alive. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Before we end, I also absolutely need to give a ringing endorsement of your book, In Order to Live.
Thank you.
A couple years ago, I read it before meeting you at the Oslo Freedom Forum. Mm-hmm. And listeners should know, there are many moments where, it's quite heartbreaking about what Yeonmi went through. But honestly, by the end, Yeonmi, your indomitable spirit just really shines through. And I just was so moved. It made me feel the depths of sadness, but it also made me feel the utmost hope for humanity. And for listeners, even if you don't listen to my recommendation, I will tell you that Yeonmi's book has the highest rating I've ever seen on Goodreads, which shows that thousands and thousands and thousands of people think it's exceptional, not just me. So, Yeonmi,
thank you so
just
much.
Congratulations for, all your just for your life and what you've been through and achieved and overcome, and the work that you continue to do. And thank you for coming on my show.
Thanks, Laura. It's been a real honor. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. To learn more about Yeonmi and her work, check out the show notes inside your podcast player. If you're not yet subscribed to my other podcast, Unconfirmed, which is shorter, a bit newsier, and now features a short news recap, be sure to check that out. Also, find out what I think are the top crypto stories each week by signing up for my email newsletter at unchainedpodcast.com. Unchained is produced by me, Laura Shin, with help from Factual Recording, Anthony Yoon, Daniel Ness, Josh Durham, and the team at CLK Transcription. Thanks for listening.